against a hooking punch.
Hey! Swing fast that time. Hey! Hey!
Here you'll see it in slow motion as we would teach it. He's throwing the punch. The hands come up as he steps and rotates out of the way from the punch and leaves away from the person. Here we're going to show you about posture and a defensive posture. In this posture, he's standing square-toed, straight up. And this is what the opponent would see if they were standing in front of him. And so here he's in the most vulnerable position. His feet are squared up, facing his opponent. His hips are squared, his chest is squared up, and both hands are straight down to the side. In a high guard posture, he's going to bring his hands up and rest them above the bend of the elbow, and yet his body's still in a vulnerable position. And this is where we train at so that we can practice the actual technique and become comfortable with the fact that the technique really works. In a real situation, or in some situations, we may train where the hands are close to the body and the palms are pointing out to the front. And so in those situations, it's to help teach the person not to have an extended armed position. And yet you'll notice he's still square-toed. In a true self-defense posture, if someone came into his space, he would blade his body back in an angle, and he would bring his hands out a little bit in front of him so that he's truly protected. But for the purpose of training, we're going to go with the front posture squared up with the hands in the high guard position. And now we'll show you a couple of reasons why we do that. Okay, here you're going to see David as he defends himself with his hands all the way down to his side in the most vulnerable position. His reactionary time is not going to be fast enough to protect his head when John takes a swing with the right hand. So watch as John throws the punch and David attempts to defend. Go ahead, John. And notice immediately he was able to hit his head and move it. So this time as they face one another, David's going to bring his hands back up to the high guard position as John stands in front of him. And this time his reaction time will be greatly increased, giving him time to defend himself. And when you're ready, John. And notice that time he was able to block and actually get out of the way. Now as they face each other, I'm going to have David bring his hands with the hands facing his opponent in the high guard. Okay? And we talked about how the hands in the high guard are somewhat close to the body. What you want to avoid is not having an extended arm guard where your hands are stuck out in front of you. Go ahead and extend your arms out. If his arms are extended in front, and he could be pulled off balance rather quickly and pulled out of position. So go ahead, John. And he's unable to defend himself. Whereas if David stands in front of him as he's doing this time with his hands open and he's got his arms closed, as John reaches out, he has much more control and should be able to bring his hands straight up and defend against it. When you're ready, John. Okay, and as you can see, it's still a little bit different, but he's able to at least control his arm because of the fact that his arms are pulled in close. So you want to avoid having your arms extended out towards an opponent. Even one arm pushed out towards an opponent, go ahead and move one arm forward. If you have one arm extended out, it just gives your opponent something to grab a hold and throw you with, and it makes it much more difficult for you to defend.